Hello, my name is Andrew Wright. This video, I want to talk about for this week, for week 3, I want to talk about the gentleman. His name is Frederick Gerstacker, and he's a Jewish merchant trying to live in during the Reconstruction era. Um, and part of the thing we wanted to discuss this week was the experience of different people during this time. Um, And one of the things that we fail to realize is that African Americans are not the only people that, excuse me, that suffered some type of racism or prejudice during the Reconstruction era, during the postbellum era. They're not the only ones, and this is something that in Frederick that we learned about through his story, through the separate readings I read about him, that he faced it too. The difference between him and what others were going through, other like African Americans, for example, was he brought something to the table. He was perceived differently than African Americans because, as I put in my abstract, African Americans were seen as people who were beneath the white man. They were people who needed to be tamed. They brought nothing to the table except slave labor and um, economic interest. And you can make the argument about Frederick as well. You can make the argument that that's how they saw him, but he was a merchant. He was somebody who brought money without the slave market, and that's something. Being a history professor, that's something that I've learned. When you go back in history, that what you find is that um, although the Jews were discriminated against and definitely had their own issues, they were seen as cash cows. They were seen as somebody who brought money to the market. Um, and so while they may have been shunned and pushed out of the world or of the white circle, so to speak, they were still they had it in their mind. The whites and the affluent white families still had it in their mind that these Jews are still able to produce money. They bring a product to the table that's going to put money in my pockets. And since we're not going to, treat them like we did the African slaves, the Caribbean slaves, and just enslave them and enslave their families, and do these sort of things to them, we need to, at least make a profit from them. And I think that Frederick's experience was people looked at him like he was a dollar, like he was a dollar bill or $100 bill floating in the wind. Everybody was trying to grab him, but at the same token, um, they knew that he was Jewish, and they knew that he was somebody that is not in our circle, who's not from where we're from, who doesn't value the things we value. And then during the thing to remember is during that time is that if you weren't white and certain had the same religious and Christian views or um, even economic views, then you were shunned. Even if you weren't black, even if you were just an Irish, for example, an Irish, a German individual, um, from those different types of heritage, you were just seen as somebody who um, you didn't fit into the Southern culture at that time if you were living during that in the South during that time, and if you were seen with under that guise, then you were cast out. But economically, Frederick brought money. He brought his mercantile ideologies with him, and so that made him be successful, and that made him not a part of the circle, but definitely somebody who could stand outside of the circle and be useful to the whites. And that's something that um, is a big thing during Reconstruction. Is the whites were like, what can we do now that we have to end slavery? Now, we talked about last week, I talked about sharecropping, but that's one of the things whites were like, what can we do now? And who can we sink our hooks into economically that's going to benefit us now that we know that we can't use the slave market like we wanted to or like it was before the Civil War? I'd be interested to know all your responses, and I'm going to look forward to having this discussion.